Hey Neppers, it's me, Wild Neptune, and today we can go over the balance updates in Epic 7 that will happen on the 5.13 update, so couple of weeks-ish of this video going up. So the heroes and artifacts that can be targeted this time around are May Chloe, Fire Cecilia, Flan, Fire Mercedes, Hazel, Carrot, Axe God, Cecilia's exclusive equipment, also the artifacts Bloody Rose, Border Coin, and Ambroach, an artifact I am convinced most players don't even know exists. So, before we get started though, make sure you subscribe, leave a like, comment, and if you want to see me play Epic 7 and some other games too, follow me at Twitch at twitch.tv/Wild Neptune. Okay, let's get started here. First off, Maid Chloe. Maid Chloe is a hero that a lot of people have been calling for buffs, because all the counters to Arbiter Vildred also happen to counter Maid Chloe. On top of that, a lot of commonly used heroes that have things like unbuffable, strip buffs, things like that, also hurt Maid Chloe. So, no matter what, her place in the meta has been non-existent recently. So let's look at some of the buffs she has. The first one, Heavy Strike, is her S1, and her most toxic ability, which is Stunning, gets better, because now you have a 40% chance to stun for a turn. On top of that, when the target is stunned after attacking, it increases the CR of all allies except for the caster, which is Maid Chloe, by 15%. So she gets a little bit of a CR boost for a team when the enemy is stunned. Notable, the enemy can be stunned from another source. So she doesn't even have to land the stun herself. It could be like a Cerise stun or something like that. And, you know, she gets the benefit from that too. She also gets a 20% ER boost on her S2 passive, which is pretty big. It is for the entire team. So it's going to help, maybe a little bit against things like your ER compositions against stuff like Fairy Tail. It might even be the difference between being stunned and not being stunned by a Tywin in the first couple of rounds of RTA, right? But that's decent. However, I think one of the biggest ones here is heals 2 allies with the lowest health. So instead of the caster and the ally with the lowest health, which is, herself, it's just whoever has the lowest health instead. Which is a pretty big change, right? So you can't like focus down two people at once, right? You have to make sure you are doing enough damage to 2 units, otherwise Maid might heal them a little bit more, and of course also just increased healing, and we'll see how much the healing is. On top of that, VIP treatment, which is S3, will now dispel 2 debuffs before the buffs go out on living allies, of course, because dead allies don't have debuffs on them. So this means things like unbuffable and other stuff that might prevent the revive buff from going out, well, those are just gone. So, as listed here, she kind of reminds me maybe a little bit of a offensive-minded DJ Passar, where you're training in immunity and a AoE CR push with revive and an attack buff. So she is better against some things than DJ Bazaar, and worse against some things as DJ Bazaar. Dispel and 2 debuffs before the attack buff and revive buff is really nice. Of course, she still suffers the same issues as before, as in strippers that go after her are pretty good against her. On top of that, the revive counter users like TML, Haste, Spez, stuff like that will do significant work against her compositions. Things like Arcerian Shadow probably also is a very good pick against her now too. But with all that said, she doesn't suffer from not doing anything because of just a random Bazaar that happens to be on the enemy team, or say like a Bryceria. Depending on how things are speed tuned, she can be a pretty strong offensive option with a little bit of safety in her revive buff, and I think that's fine. Her kit makes it really good, but not broken. She still has counters, which is nice. I don't think it's healthy to just have her be good against the things that should counter her, like Emerald Haste. But she might have a place in the meta coming up. Next up we have Cecilia. The Fire Knight. Cecilia has had a difficult time finding a place for basically ever since she came out. She's always been, I feel, almost relevant, but there's always a few knights that are just a little bit better than her. When she came out, it was stuff like Clary, obviously, but like Carmen. I believe Shadow Rose was still being used way back then. Even Normal Rose a little bit. And then, obviously, later on, stuff like FCC. And now we have stuff like A-Tai with Ella Crow, stuff like that. So she's always just not quite there. Anyway, she's getting 2 buffs. One is on the S1, and when the target is afflicted by decreased attack, and her S2 has AoE decreased attack, it will increase the chance of landing the defense break by 25%. So it is a 75% chance defense break on the S1 for 2 turns, which is very good, I might add. But remember, it is conditional. But however, even then, this is one of the better S1s in the game, in my opinion. And her S2 will now dispel a buff natively before it does the AoE, which again I mentioned is an attack down, which can be good for defending against high attackers. On top of that, it will strip things off, like, maybe immunity. Of course, barriers and stuff, those do exist and will be taken off first, right? And it might get rid of that May Chloe revive, right? Depending. And because her EE had the dispel, it is being changed to, instead of dispelling a buff, to decrease speed for 2 turns. And decreased speed is a very uncommon debuff. I believe the only meta units that currently have it are a Tywin and Cerise. And one of the reasons why a Tywin and Cerise can just lap so quickly and just seem to like lock down your team is because of the decreased speed. Because as they're zooming past you, you're just slower. So this is a pretty significant buff when you add these 2 things together. It's hard to tell here if this is enough to push her into being good enough, especially with stuff like a Tyrant LR Crow and stuff like that can kind of mitigate some of the single debuffs that she's going to be putting out here and there. But she's worth looking out for. Next we have Flan. So, see here, Soulburn is moving to her S2, and we'll get to that in a moment. But her, I'm sorry, into her S3. Her S2 is being changed to increasing attack instead of crit hit damage. And attack. Sorry, it's increasing attack and critical damage. So you get double the boost. On top of that, she's gaining another soul for whatever reason from it. And her S3 will not only decrease defense of everybody for 2 turns, but it will also decrease their CR by 15%, and the soul burn is an extra turn. So basically, she's a better Tywin. She's a Tywin that does not have to worry about elemental advantage because her S3 does no damage, so it ignores evasion checks. This includes things like Remnant Violet, as if he needed anything else to worry about right now. If this style of play ever becomes relevant again, Flan will be very good. In World Arena, I don't think this is going to change much at the high levels right away. Tywin is never used, and Flan, even though she's better than Tywin, suffers from the same issues that he does with this kit. And even right now in normal arena, things like Politis and stuff being everywhere kind of shuts this down too, a little bit also. But this is definitely a good change. It keeps her kit very similar to what it was before, just makes it better. Although I will say that just kind of making her a better Tywin seems, maybe normal Tywin could get a little bit of a rework, something like that. So you basically have a hero that does now almost the exact same thing, and that is arguably a better class in a ranger to do it as. So, okay, Fire Mercedes, a hero that they've been trying to make relevant for a very long time, and as spoilers, that's not going to change here. The buffs are nice. Her S1 gets more damage. Her S2 has a Vivian-like effect where if she uses it when there are 3 or fewer enemies, she activates it again, and she does decreased damage, but it can only be activated this way 1 time. And then her S3, she gets an attack boost after she uses the S3. So she won't get the buff the first time she uses it, which is kind of unfortunate that she doesn't. I think it would have been nice to have it just give it the attack buff before she uses the S3, but it seems pretty poor for the course that that's how it works. I don't think this is going to make her good enough to use in, say, PvP. Right now, she's a decent option for Grass Expo, which I might add is gone now because it's been replaced by the... No, sorry, wait, is it still... I actually don't know if it's still there or if the Dark One left. So don't quote me on which one's gone or anything like that, right? But, no, fine Mercedes. Honestly, a hero, I think they just give to us at plus 15. Hazel. Let's skip to her specialty change here. And her S2 which is her single target heal, has a Sierra boost for herself by 15%, and it also doubles the healing when the target's health is 50% or below, which is very good because Hazel's healing, like a lot of attack scaling healers, kind of suck. So that's a welcome change. Also, her AoE heal, S3 attack buff and like that, will also dispel one debuff, which is also a good thing because one of the things she's really struggled with a lot was taking care of debuffs. Also, her runes are changing, and if she has fire element partners, she dispels 2 debuffs instead of oh no, this is her S2. So when she uses S2, she'll dispel 2 debuffs on a fire hero. And also, if all allies are fire element heroes, recovers health by 10% when using her S2. And then, after using Book of Fire, which is her S1, recovers the health of the lowest ally by 5%. So it's like a mini Celestine. This will make it a little more stable in PvE content. It's still not good enough to be used in PvP. And honestly, probably not good enough to be used outside of where she is right now, which is Grass Expo. But, welcome changes, definitely. A Carrot. Let's go to her specialty change. And S1 will now decrease speed, but will have a 100% chance to detonate burn effects after using it, which is really, really big. Because a big issue with Carrot was the consistency of her detonation. This here, the barrier will be active once per turn, is the same thing. They just moved it to be a true passive and not have a cooldown. I always found that kind of weird how that worked. But anyway, her S3 will now dispel a buff before it attempts to burn. So things like immunity, well, they don't help you anymore. And you know what? Pretty high chance to land 2 burns. And guess what? Her soul burn now is an extra turn. So she can dispel immunity, soul burn, burn you, and then detonate those burns right away. Which is, I think that's pretty good. Also, the damage is being done. It's also increasing. And then what else is increasing? Her attack power. See here, she's going from a 5 and a 7% to a 15 and a 10%. So she's gaining 13% total attack, which is significant. On top of that, she will now gain continuous healing after using her S3. The burn chance will be increased by 25%, which, 75 plus 25, that's 100% if my math's correct. So 100% chance, minus 15%, to burn. And then, also, if she's attacked, she will now dispel a debuff every one of the caster's turns, which is really good. So it's like a built-in Crimson Seed that always works. And then her passive rune, where if she's at max health, she takes decreased damage. Well, she'll take a little more damage, 20% compared to 25, but it also works if you're at 80% or higher, which is a lot easier to pull off than being at max all the time. So these changes are very good. I think these were done to try to curtail things like Landy and some of the stealth stuff going around right now. So we'll see how this shapes up. But she definitely seems like she might be somebody you want to invest in a little bit. She is a 3-star specialty change, so you should have her because she's an RGB. But let's move on to the next one, which is Axe God. We'll go to specialty change here. He got the biggest overhaul out of all the heroes. And it starts off with, he now has HP scaling. And this kind of annoys me. I think HP scaling is a little bit too strong. It just depends on how good the scaling is. To be fair, he's not a hero that seems to have like the most HP on a lot of his builds. But the more important thing too is that the bleed, instead of chance to bleed, it is changing to a 75% chance to provoke, which is good for multiple reasons, as we'll see here. His S2 will give him immunity, and for a soul run of 10 turns, will decrease the cooldown by 2 turns, and this means he can just use this over and over again with 10 souls. His S3 will grant an extra turn if an enemy is defeated, so the extra turn is moving from the S2 to the S3, which seems to be a lot better because the S3 is the big damage attack. And he's gaining some defense. He's losing 10 health here, but it's being made up here, and he's gaining health here. So 5% health net and 15% defense. And this is the big part here. Okay. When attacking light element targets with rigorous strike, or his S3, penetrates defense by 40%. So basically, dark LQC. So LQC against light units. He doesn't get the damage reduction that LQC does, but he will get the damage bonus. Also, his provoke chance when attacking light heroes is increased by 25%, which adds to, I believe, 100% when using the S1. And also, he has a chance of extending immunity buffs by the caster for 1 turn after using his S2. Also, his S2 has built-in injury, which is a debuff. Nobody knows what it does because nobody uses it, but basically it permanently decreases the max health of the people hit up to a percentage, 10% in this case, if it does that much damage. So things like barriers will block it. Just having like high defense and not doing enough damage will also lower the effects. Also, if he's attacked by a light hero, he there's a CR boost. So kind of like a G-Focus effect too. And he also gets an attack stack after he's attacked. So 6% times 5, which is 30%, which is not the biggest boost, but it does add up after a bit. This is pretty good, right? We have to see how effective he's going to be against all of the light heroes. LQC is very strong because she has the self-heal on her kit on the S3, and she does a lot of damage. We'll have to see if he can do respectable damage and how it works for him not having the self-heal that LQC does, right? But I suspect that he'll make a little bit of noise for a little bit, at least. So artifacts here. Bloody Rose is getting a 50% chance to inflict Vampiric Touch on the target for 2 turns. if you don't know what this does, it is healing to anybody who attacks the target with this debuff. It is a very strong debuff for sustained teams. One of the bigger issues here, though, is that for PvP, mage artifacts that are being used are used for a reason, because they're very good, and they just counter a lot of things in the meta. So, violin, book, crown, stuff like that. It is very hard to find other artifacts for mages, unless it's just something very specific that you need them to do, that are going to be used over those. So, good buff, honestly, but probably not going to be relevant for a lot of characters right now. Border Coin is getting a speed buff at 10% every time it's used, so this is kind of win more, right? If you use a non-attack skill on a warrior, with Senya, right? That's who I can think of. Kitty Clarissa, I guess, too. It can be used on, but if you use it on Kitty, you're probably gonna want another artifact, right? It can be decent, but things like Portrait or Symbol of Unity are gonna still do more damage on the first attack, and if you get that attack off and kill somebody, you don't really need this increased speed. You won, right? So that's really what my opinion's on here. Kind of a meaningless buff, honestly, in a lot of cases. And finally, Ambrote, an artifact I'm convinced that most people don't know what it is. It was one of the first, it might have been the first, event artifact in the game. It is a 4-star. It increases damage done by basic skill by 20%, and now it also increases speed by 2% after using a basic skill up to 5 times, so max 10%. It is a ranger only artifact, so probably good on, it's curious on the art, so it's good and curious for Abyss, right? Probably good for like Yuna, honestly. Her basic skill synergizes with this quite nicely. Outside of that, it's hard to see any usage for it right now. But those are the balance changes. This is a pretty good one. There are a lot of things here that I feel are gonna make, or have the potential to make, heroes that we forgot about or just weren't used a lot to be relevant again in the future. Keep in mind that these changes are subject to be different when they actually happen, although I do believe they've only changed the buffs one time, and that's because people complained about the buffs being not good. But that's what we have here, and it's been a good one here. Thanks for watching. Nep out.